I was holding onto the edge of the bathroom sink, hands trembling, mascara running down my cheeks like war paint I hadn't meant to wear. My chest felt like it was collapsing inward, a panic attack I couldn't stop, couldn't hide, couldn't breathe through. From behind me, through the cracked door, I heard her voice, my best friend since college.
Chloe. She's doing it again, she laughed.
Like, full meltdown mode. Should I get her a camera too? So she can vlog the drama? The other voices joined in. Light chuckles. A mock gasp. A fake sob. I stared at my reflection. Was this who I was to them? A walking embarrassment? Some kind of sideshow? I didn't say a word. I just wiped my face, flushed the toilet to pretend I'd been sick, and stepped out like I hadn't heard a thing. But inside, something cracked, and not the way they thought. They thought I was breaking down. But I was finally waking up. I don't remember when I started swallowing my feelings whole, but I do remember the first time I realized no one noticed. It was second grade. We were doing those little family tree posters, and while most kids had moms and dads and smiling grandparents, I pasted my crooked photos in silence. My dad had already moved out by then, and my mom, Diane, was in one of her overwhelmed phases. She always had these long stretches where she just drifted, not absent, just emotionally unavailable, like her spirit had left the house while her body kept cooking dinner. I brought the poster home, all excited to show her how I'd tried to make it pretty. "You spelled your last name wrong," was all she said before lighting a cigarette and walking away. That was the first time I understood something about my place in the world. People didn't comfort girls like me. They corrected us. Growing up with my mom was like tiptoeing around an emotional landmine field. Some days she'd be sweet, humming along to the radio while making waffles. Other days, she'd look through me like I was some ghost passing through her kitchen. If I cried, even once, she'd snap. "What are you crying for? You think you've got it bad." I started hiding my emotions early. I learned the art of the quiet exhale, the practiced smile, the "I'm fine." By middle school, I had mastered being the girl who didn't ask for anything, the reliable one, the emotional sponge, the fixer. My sister, Lindsay, was a different story. She could throw tantrums in Target and still get rewarded with candy. She could flunk a test, and my mom would write notes to the teacher begging for leniency. When I came home with stray days, my mom's eyes would flicker across the paper like it was a grocery receipt. "Good," she'd say. That was it. Just good. By high school, I was so good at managing everyone else's emotions that no one remembered I had my own. I was the designated driver, the group therapist, the friend who'd stay up all night talking someone through a breakup and still show up to class with extra granola bars for anyone who skipped breakfast. That's how I met Chloe, the same girl who would laugh at my breakdown years later. We met freshman year in chemistry class. She was magnetic, sarcastic, bold, stylish. She had this way of commanding attention, like the room naturally rotated around her. I wasn't jealous. I just wanted to stand close enough to feel some of that warmth. She noticed me because I was always prepared. I had the right notes, the extra pens, the quiet smile, and once, when she got caught skipping lab and was about to fail, I offered to help her catch up by pretending she'd been studying with me the whole time. That lie saved her GPA. She never forgot it, not because she was grateful, but because it meant I could be useful. That's how our friendship began. Not a friendship, really, more like a transaction I never realized I'd signed up for. She brought the charm. I brought the loyalty. She had the spotlight. I carried the bags. There were moments, real ones, where I thought we were close. Nights we'd talk about our fears, our childhoods, our dreams. But they were always on her terms. When she needed support, I was there. When I needed anything more than a meme reply or a LOL same, she'd change the subject or make it about herself. Still, I clung to the illusion. I had built my life on the belief that if I gave enough, stayed quiet enough, held things together long enough, eventually, I'd be seen. I'd be chosen. But in every space, family, friendships, even work, I was the quiet girl in the corner, holding the pieces no one else wanted to touch. My job was no different. I worked as a customer service rep at a tech company in downtown Nashville. It was high pressure, thankless, and draining, especially for someone who already spent her personal life suppressing every flicker of emotion. But I was good at it. Really good. I knew how to stay calm under pressure, de-escalate angry clients, and fix mistakes that weren't mine. My boss, Dan, once joked, Emily could be on fire and still answer the phone with a smile. He meant it as a compliment. I took it like a diagnosis. I'd go to work, come home, cook dinner for my mom when she was in her depressive funks, and then log on to group chats where Chloe would joke about how I was the mom friend while sending her selfies from rooftop bars. She'd never invite me, of course. I was too tired, too chill, too sensitive for her kind of fun. But I'd still like the photos. Still reply with hearts. Still act like I wasn't slowly disappearing. And then came Ryan. He was the first person who actually noticed me for me. He was Chloe's cousin, visiting for a few weeks during the holidays. We met at her New Year's party, where I had been tasked with setting up the food and playlist and, surprise, cleaning up everyone's mess. He came into the kitchen while I was scrubbing wine out of the carpet and said, "You shouldn't be the one doing this." I laughed. "I'm always the one doing this." He tilted his head. "That doesn't mean you should be." It was such a small sentence, but it stuck in my bones. No one had ever said that to me. Not my mom, not Chloe, not anyone. For the next few days, we talked. A lot. He was kind, observant, interested in what I had to say. He told me I had a calming energy, like someone who brings peace into chaos. I cried after our third conversation. Not because of what he said, but because it felt so foreign to be truly seen. But even that ended in silence. Ryan went back home. Promised we'd keep in touch. We didn't. After he left, Chloe teased me mercilessly about it. Em's got a little crush," she said, mimicking a swoon. "You sure you didn't trauma dump him out of town?" I laughed along with her. But inside, I was folding myself back up. That's the thing about people like me. We know how to disappear so well, we start forgetting we're even here. Until something snaps. And for me, it finally did. I should have said no. When Chloe invited me on her birthday weekend trip, a full 3-day cabin getaway with 10 of her closest friends, every part of me screamed to decline. I was exhausted, emotionally depleted, and behind on work. But when you've spent your life earning scraps of affection, a simple "come with us" can feel like a golden ticket you're terrified to refuse. So I said yes. The cabin was stunning. A sleek glass front lodge perched on the side of a mountain, complete with a hot tub, bonfire pit, and floor-to-ceiling windows that made everything look like it belonged in a luxury Airbnb ad. The others came in waves. Influencers, realtors, Chloe's college roommates, her new work bestie. All loud. All gorgeous. All with their own inside jokes I wasn't part of. I found my usual role fast: coordinator, cook, chaos smoother. I helped unpack groceries, set up a snack board, refilled wine glasses. I didn't even have a real bed. Chloe forgot to assign me a room, so I ended up on a pull-out couch in the loft. "You don't mind, right?" she asked, tossing a throw blanket at me with a smile. "You're always so chill." I smiled. "It's fine." It always was. The first night was easy. I stayed quiet, laughed when appropriate, and disappeared early to get some rest, code for have a quiet cry under a too-thin blanket. But the second night broke me. It started at dinner. Everyone was tipsy, loud, carefree. Chloe was sitting on the armrest of a guy named Trevor, who she'd been flirting with all weekend. Music blasted from someone's Bluetooth speaker while phones buzzed with notifications and Instagram stories. Then someone, I think it was her friend Rachel, brought up a new game. "Let's do unfiltered," she said. "You have to answer honestly or take a shot. No passing." At first, it was harmless. "Who here would you kiss? What's your body count?" Then it shifted. Rachel smirked at Chloe and said, "Who in this room is the most emotionally unstable?" Everyone laughed. Some nervous, some excited. Chloe barely hesitated before pointing her wine glass directly at me. "Come on," she said, grinning. "It's obviously Emily." I blinked. Someone whistled. "Damn," Trevor chuckled. "Cold." Chloe turned toward me, still smiling, like this was all some kind of adorable inside joke.
Don't be mad, she said.
I mean, you cried at that dog commercial last week. And you kind of had a mini freak out when the coffee shop forgot your order. We love you, but you're kind of fragile. Laughter again. Not cruel, worse. Casual. I felt my face flush hot. My ears buzzed. I forced a smile. I'm not mad. But I couldn't breathe. I stood up, trying to stay steady. My hands were shaking. Just going to get some air, I mumbled.
No one followed me.
I stepped out onto the deck, the night air biting cold against my skin. The stars were smeared above the mountains, brilliant and unreachable. I gripped the wooden railing and tried to slow my breathing, in through the nose, out through the mouth, like my therapist taught me. But it wasn't working. The tears came too fast. Not delicate, ugly, guttural sobs that racked through my whole body. I crouched down, arms wrapped around my knees, shaking as the panic spiraled up and out of me. I felt the old thoughts slip in like poison. You're too much. Why are you like this? No one takes you seriously. No one ever will. I didn't know how long I was out there. Maybe 15 minutes. Maybe an hour. Then the door creaked. Footsteps. It was Chloe. She didn't kneel. Didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't even look concerned. She lit a cigarette and leaned on the railing, her back turned slightly toward me. You're doing this again, she said flatly. I swear, you always make everything about you. I looked up, eyes swollen. I didn't ask for anything, I whispered. She scoffed.
Exactly.
You never do. And somehow we still end up walking on eggshells around you. That's when I knew I could collapse in front of her and she'd step over me without flinching. The girl I thought was my best friend saw my pain as a burden. I stood up, slowly. My knees felt like jelly. My voice, when it came, surprised me with its steadiness. You don't have to worry about walking on eggshells anymore. She raised an eyebrow. What's that supposed to mean? I looked her in the eye. I'm done. And I walked past her, through the door and down the stairs to the loft, where I packed my things in silence. No one stopped me. No one asked what happened. Not Chloe. Not Rachel. Not any of the 10 people who laughed when I became the punchline. I drove back to Nashville that night, the mountain roads twisting like my chest. By the time I pulled into my driveway, at 4:13 a.m., I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't anything. Just hollow. But somewhere in that hollowness, something clicked. I had been trying to earn a kind of love that didn't exist in the places I was looking. And maybe, just maybe, it was time I stopped looking for it at all. The silence after a storm is always strange. You expect echoes, aftershocks, something. But when I woke up the next morning in my own bed, wrapped in my own blanket, the quiet felt like a soft landing. No missed calls. No texts. Nothing from Chloe. Nothing from anyone on that trip. And for once, that nothing didn't sting. It felt like the absence of noise, of pressure, of needing to perform. I left my phone on airplane mode and took a long shower, the kind where you let the hot water hit your skin until it turns pink, just to remind yourself you're still here. That day, I didn't post on social media. Didn't answer messages. I just rested. I cleaned my apartment. I made tea. I journaled, not in some dramatic way, just in bullet points. Chloe laughed. No one cared. I broke. But I'm not broken. It was the first time in years I didn't try to explain or justify anything. Not even to myself. The withdrawal started in the smallest ways. I left the group chat. Not with a goodbye. Just gone. I unfollowed Chloe on Instagram. Then her friends. Then anyone who made me feel like I had to shrink myself to fit into their curated world. I didn't post a dramatic story. I didn't make a statement. I just disappeared from their lives quietly. The weight of my constant availability lifted. And in its place?
Space. Space to think. To breathe.
To ask, what do I want? The answers didn't come all at once. Healing never does. At first, I was just tired. Not the kind of tired sleep fixes, the kind that seeps into your soul after years of emotional labor. So I gave myself permission to rest. I started small. Morning walks around the block with no destination. A playlist of soft piano and indie acoustics instead of the upbeat crowd pleasers Chloe used to blast. I rearranged my living room, moved the couch near the window, brought in a few plants. I didn't realize how much I craved sunlight until I started sitting in it. Work was the next shift. I stopped volunteering for extra shifts. Stopped staying late to cover for coworkers who had dinner plans. When someone dropped the ball on a client and my boss turned to me like he always did, I said, "I'm actually at capacity this week." Dan blinked. "You sure?" I nodded. Yes. He didn't push. That moment, that single refusal, rewired something in me. I had been building my value on how much I could absorb, how much I could tolerate.
But now?
Now I was building something else. Something quieter. Stronger. I started therapy again. Not because I was falling apart, but because I wanted to understand why I kept building relationships that made me disappear. My therapist, Carmen, was direct but kind. "You're not dramatic," she said. "You're deeply feeling. And you've been taught to apologize for it." I cried during that session, but not because I was sad. Because for the first time, someone labeled my pain with dignity. Week by week, I created boundaries. Gentle ones, but firm. When my mom called and started venting about her problems without asking how I was, I interrupted her, kindly. "Mom," I said, "I can't carry this today. Can we talk about something lighter?" She was surprised. Annoyed, even. But she adjusted. People do when they realize the conditions have changed. I started cooking for myself again. Not rushed microwave dinners or meal bars between emails. Real food. Bowls with color and warmth. And slowly, the ache that used to sit in my chest like a permanent tenant began to fade. It wasn't that the pain was gone. It was just quieter now. I replaced Chloe's voice, that constant loop of critique disguised as humor, with my own. I'd catch myself thinking things like, "You're being too sensitive," and correct them mid-thought.
No.
"You're responding to something real. You're allowed to feel it." I didn't need revenge. I didn't need her to realize she was wrong. I just needed distance. And the beauty of withdrawal is that it gives you perspective. From a distance, I could see the patterns I was too close to name before. How often I gave without being asked. How rarely anyone offered in return. How exhausting it was to always be the one holding the emotional weight. I had called it love, loyalty, support. But really it was performance. And I was done performing. 2 weeks after the trip, Chloe texted me for the first time. "Chloe. Hey, haven't heard from you. You good?" I stared at the screen for a long time. Not angry. Not bitter. Just done. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I didn't know her access to me anymore. That was the shift. For the first time, my silence wasn't out of fear or confusion. It was freedom. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream or rage. I simply walked away and let the echo of my absence speak for itself. And in that silence, I began to hear myself again. There was a calmness about me now that unsettled the people who used to enjoy my chaos. At work, I no longer volunteered for overtime or brought in homemade muffins. I sat with myself, headphones in, soft instrumental jazz playing while I handled my tasks. I didn't laugh at jokes I didn't find funny. I didn't chase conversations or send cheerful, "Hope you're having a great day," emails to people who barely noticed my presence. I just existed.
Cleanly.
Quietly. It was in that silence, that absence of effort, that I became visible to someone unexpected. His name was Noah Reed, one of the senior analysts, soft-spoken, mid-30s, always with a pen tucked behind his ear. We'd worked in the same building for years, passed each other in the hallway countless times, but never spoke beyond the polite, "Hey" and "Morning." That changed on a Wednesday. I was in the break room, pouring coffee, when he walked in. Usually he went for black, no cream, no sugar. But that day, he stood beside me a moment longer. "You changed your perfume," he said.
I turned, surprised.
"Excuse me?" He smiled, a little embarrassed. "Sorry, that was weird, wasn't it? I don't know. You seem different lately." I didn't respond at first. My guard went up. Different like weird different? No, he said quickly. No, not at all. Actually, kind of peaceful. Like something settled. That struck something in me. I couldn't hide it. The slight shift in my breath. Someone had noticed. Not my breakdown, not my performance, but my quiet reclamation. Later that day, he dropped by my desk. Hey, I'm putting together a cross-department project, he said. There's a training session on emotional intelligence and team culture. I remember seeing something in your file about your psych minor. I blinked. You read my file?
He grinned.
Well, technically, it's part of the project. But I'll admit, I've always thought you had a lot more to offer than just spreadsheets.
No one had ever said that to me.
Not Chloe. Not any of the people I used to revolve my self-worth around. Noah wasn't being flirtatious. He wasn't trying to get anything from me. He just saw me. He saw me as I was now, not the crying girl in the bathroom, not the people pleaser, not the invisible background presence, but the woman who'd broken, rebuilt, and learned to be still in her own presence. That night, I walked home a little slower. The sunset felt warmer on my face. The street musicians didn't feel like noise. I wasn't rushing to escape my own thoughts. I'd started going to a yoga class down the street. Small group. Dim lights. No mirrors. No one cared how deep your stretch was, they just cared that you were breathing. After class one evening, I stayed back to help roll up mats. A woman named Shayla, mid-50s, curly gray hair, and a voice like velvet, looked at me and said, "You've got anchor energy." "What does that mean?" I asked. She smiled. When people feel lost, they drift towards someone who feels like home, even if they don't understand why. You've got that now. I could have cried right then, but not the shattered sobs of months before. This would have been a release, a soft sigh that said, finally. People were noticing. Not the performance, not the perfection, but the authenticity, the stillness, the grounded power I didn't know I had until I stopped giving it away. Chloe, meanwhile, had grown louder online. She'd started posting reels of herself doing mental health check-ins, complete with inspirational quotes and overly cheerful captions. And the irony of it all? People loved her content. Her following was growing. I didn't resent her. Not anymore. But it was clear she hadn't changed, just repackaged her identity for public validation. I didn't follow her back. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after that break room conversation, I was leaving the building when I saw Noah again. This time, he looked hesitant. "Hey, can I ask you something?"
Sure.
"There's a leadership development retreat next month in Vermont. Mostly internal team leads, but I think you should come. I already recommended you." I raised a brow. "Why?" He tilted his head. "Because you've done the kind of work that no resume shows, the internal kind. And I think that makes you exactly the kind of person this company needs in leadership." I didn't say yes right away. I went home, sat with it, and cried. But again, softly. A grief for the version of me that spent years waiting to be seen by the wrong people. And a gratitude that finally someone right had noticed. It started with a like. An Instagram heart from Chloe on a photo I posted of my hike through Lake Arrowhead trails. My hair tied up, no makeup, just wind and sunshine and something unspoken glowing behind my eyes. The girl who once laughed at my breakdown was now quietly watching my rise.
I didn't respond.
I didn't block her either. I just let it sit, like a stone dropped in still water, letting the ripples go where they would. The next came a few days later, a comment. From Becca, one of the girls who used to hang out with Chloe. The one who used to fake sympathy while texting Chloe behind my back. "You look amazing, girl. I've been following your journey. So proud of you." Proud of me? They used to whisper about whether I was safe to be around during my breakdown. Now they were proud. I took a sip of my chamomile tea, sitting on the balcony of Jason's apartment. He had gone inside to start dinner, but I could hear him humming. That gentle hum. That safe hum. "Another ghost from the past?" he asked when he returned, setting down a small plate of roasted vegetables next to my tea. I smiled faintly.
Yeah.
Seems like they all watched the movie, but forgot who the villain was. Jason chuckled. "Well, Now they're watching the director's cut. And guess what? You've got the rights now. I had to admit, his corny metaphors were growing on me. Over the next few weeks, it became a pattern. Quiet reach-outs. Old friends who had drifted or had drifted me away suddenly popping back into view, like forgotten messages finally delivered. Some were passive. Some tried to act like nothing had happened. And some, like Chloe, finally broke the silence. It was a Wednesday afternoon when I got the text. Chloe, hey Madison. I know this is probably weird, but I've been thinking about you a lot lately. Do you think we could talk sometime? I stared at my screen for a long time. My thumb hovered. Talk? What was there to say? That I'd heard the laughter? That I'd seen the texts? That I'd spent weeks doubting my reality, thinking I was overreacting, only to find out I had every right to feel what I did? That I didn't crumble because of her. I rebuilt in spite of her? I left the message on read.
For a day.
Then 2. Then a week. I didn't feel petty. I felt peaceful. Jason noticed the shift. You're not avoiding her out of fear anymore. No, I said. I'm not scared of her. I'm just no longer interested in translating my pain into a language she can finally understand. But Chloe wasn't done. 2 weeks later, I saw her at Brielle's art showcase downtown. A public gallery night. I hadn't expected Chloe to be there. We hadn't crossed paths in almost a year. But there she was. Same soft waves in her blonde hair. Same tailored confidence. Except something was off. She looked uncertain. I was standing next to Jason when she approached me. Madison, she said softly. Her voice didn't carry the same edge it used to. You look incredible. I met her eyes.
Calm.
Thank you. I didn't know you were still connected with Brielle, she added. Brielle reached out a while back. We talked. Reconnected. People change. There was a flicker in Chloe's eyes. I could tell she caught the subtext. She took a breath. Can I just say something? I know I was a crappy friend. I know I laughed when I shouldn't have. And I know it's probably too late. But I wanted to apologize. She looked down, fumbling with the strap of her purse. I never knew how to deal with what you were going through. So I turned it into a joke. And that's on me. I didn't feel anger anymore. Just space between who we were and who we became. I appreciate the apology, I said gently. It matters more than you think. She nodded, eyes glistening. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I didn't promise anything, but I smiled. Later, in the car with Jason, he asked, Do you think you'll be friends again? I leaned back, watching the streetlights blur past. Maybe not in the same way. But I don't need revenge anymore. I just need peace. He reached over and squeezed my hand. That's why I love you, he whispered. The real shift wasn't that they were reaching out. It was that I no longer needed them to. I had already given myself the closure they never would. I had built a life without their applause, without their pity, without their permission. They could scroll. They could watch. They could wonder.
But I
had moved on. And the view from here was breathtaking. It was raining the day I spoke on stage. Not the dramatic, cinematic rain, just a quiet drizzle, the kind that makes people tuck their coats tighter and walk a little faster. But inside the small auditorium of the downtown community center, something else was unfolding. The Women Who Reclaimed Themselves event wasn't flashy or viral. It wasn't streamed or hyped. Just a cozy space with folding chairs, a thrift store podium, and maybe 35 women, some clutching coffees, others arms folded, all waiting. I stood in front of them, palms slick, voice trembling at first. My name is Emily Carson, I began, and for a long time, I thought I had to be what everyone else needed me to be.
Polished.
Pleasant. Predictable. There was a pause, the kind where silence stretches long enough to tempt retreat. But I stayed. And then one day, I fell apart. Not the quiet, tidy kind of falling apart, the loud, messy, people laugh behind closed doors kind. And I thought that was the end of me. I looked around. Some heads nodded. One woman wiped her eye. But it wasn't the end. It was the opening. To myself. To everything I'd been silencing just to survive. I spoke about therapy, about rebuilding a daily life that wasn't curated for applause, about learning to eat alone in restaurants without shame, about walking away from people who only ever saw me as their entertainment. I stopped trying to be their good girl. I finished. And I started being my own. A few moments passed. And then applause. Not the kind that's polite, but the kind that's real. And in the middle row, I saw a face I didn't expect. Chloe. She looked older somehow, not in years, but in spirit. Like life had pressed into her, too. Our eyes met, and for a flicker of a second, I saw something that hadn't been there before. Not pity, not awkwardness. Recognition. Afterward, she came up to me. Her voice was quieter than I remembered. Emily, I didn't know. Back then. I didn't understand what you were going through. I was an idiot. I smiled softly. Not with smugness. Just peace. You were just where you were, I said. So was I. She looked away, jaw tight. But I hurt you. You did. But I'm not carrying that anymore. I've got lighter things to hold. She nodded slowly, eyes glistening. You're incredible. You know that. For the first time in years, I heard those words without bracing for sarcasm. I left the center that day without fanfare. No crowd. No viral reel. Just a handful of women who'd heard the truth and felt less alone because of it. But when I got home, something was waiting in my inbox. An invitation. From a podcast I deeply admired. One that had helped me through sleepless nights. The host had heard about the event and wanted me on as a guest. I think your story could help a lot of women, the message read. Would you be open to sharing it? I stared at the screen for a long time.
Me?
The girl who broke down in a public restroom, mocked by her best friend?
Yes. Me.
I replied. I'd be honored. I didn't send a dramatic message. I didn't block her. I didn't post some glittering Instagram quote about self-love. I just stopped replying. Not out of spite, but out of peace. The kind of peace you earn after crawling through yourself and making it out alive. It had been nearly a year since that day in the bathroom. Since I heard Chloe laugh while I broke into pieces. And now here she was again. Sitting across from me at the cafe she had suggested, one that had once been our spot, though I hadn't stepped foot in it in almost 2 years. She looked nervous. Her fingers played with her sleeve like she didn't know how to begin. I just want to say, I didn't know how bad it was for you back then, she finally said. If I did, I swear, I wouldn't have been so dismissive. I smiled gently. I know. That was it. That was all she needed to say. And all I needed to hear. We both knew the space between us couldn't be repaired. But there was no bitterness in the silence that followed. Just a soft understanding, the kind that doesn't need to be spoken. She wanted me back in her life. I could feel it in the way her eyes lingered when I stood to leave. In the way she asked, so, maybe we can talk again sometime? I paused at the door. My heart didn't race. My breath didn't falter. Maybe, I said. But we both knew what I really meant. I walked away without turning back. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clean. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving her wrong. It was about choosing myself, quietly, firmly, finally. A few days later, she sent a long message. Apologies. Regrets. Questions. I didn't respond. I read it once. Then I deleted it. Not to be cold, but because I didn't need the closure she was offering. I had already closed that chapter. And for the first time in my life, my silence wasn't a scream. It was peace. I smiled to myself as I turned off my phone. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't broken. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was free. If you're watching this and you've ever felt invisible in your own life, I see you. Truly, I do. I know what it feels like to sit in a room full of people and feel like your voice doesn't matter. To give and give, hoping that maybe this time, someone will notice you're breaking. And when they don't, you tell yourself maybe you're just too much. Or not enough. Or both. But I promise you, you were never too much. And you were always enough. They just weren't your mirror. The day I stopped trying to be seen by people who were committed to misunderstanding me was the day my healing began. Because the truth is, some people don't want to see your full self. Not because you're unworthy, but because your light reminds them of everything they've dimmed in themselves. If you've been through betrayal, especially by someone you loved or called a friend, you know it doesn't just hurt. It unroots you. You question your worth, your judgment, your history. You even question your memories. But here's what I want you to remember. Sometimes, the people who betray you weren't lying about who you were. They were just revealing who they are. And when someone shows you that, believe them, but don't become them. It would have been easy for me to turn cold, to let bitterness become my boundary. But I didn't want to become a fortress. I wanted to become a garden. So I chose something radical: softness. I chose to rebuild without needing to be seen. I chose to become a home to myself. And now the right people see me. Not because I performed. Not because I begged. But because I stopped shrinking. I stopped apologizing for the depth of my feelings. And I started speaking to myself the way I wished others had. If you're in the middle of your own unraveling, hold on. Hold yourself. Let it break. Let it burn. Let it cry out of you. Because once it does, you'll find that who you are beneath the ashes is not small, not invisible, but powerful beyond measure. You'll see that your softness was never weakness. It was your gift. You don't need to scream to be heard. You don't need to prove you were right. And you don't need revenge to feel whole. Sometimes the final no isn't a slammed door. It's a quiet walk away. A returned peace. A life that no longer includes them. Not because you hate them, but because you love yourself too much to go back. So, if you needed a sign, this is it. Your healing is valid. Your tears mattered. And your future, it's still yours. Let them laugh. Let them question. Let them reach out too late. You don't need to prove anything anymore. You just need to keep going. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, share it, not for me, but for someone else who might be sitting alone in their own silent breakdown, wondering if anyone sees them. Because I do. And now maybe so do you.